Yo, what's up guys? Let's talk about some of the best smartphones that you can find in that $200 price range. Starting off with the Poco X3 NFC. I really like this phone and it comes in at around $233, and I'll put all those links down below. So this is an awesome little budget phone to pick up. So it's actually got an aluminum frame, plastic back on here. It's IP53 dust and splash proof, so you can kind of get it wet in the rain. And I think the design on here is pretty bold. It's pretty unique, especially with the camera module. So you have a massive 6.67-inch display on here, so it's definitely a big phone. It's an IPS display at 120 Hz, which means it's extremely silky smooth display. So scrolling, playing games at 120 Hz is going to look really smooth and really awesome on this display. It also has 395 for the PPI, so it's fairly sharp, along with the punch hole in the middle and respectable bezels. This phone does come out of the box with Android 10. You will be getting Android 11, and it does run MIUI 12. So you do have the Snapdragon 732G and the Adreno 618. So this phone was pretty much, powerful enough to handle MIUI and not stutter and really lag all over the place. This phone did pretty good for casual gaming, playing PUBG, Call of Duty Mobile, just fine. Of course, you're not going to be able to max stuff out, but my experience gaming on here was fine. You also have micro SD support, and the base model is 64 gigs and 6 gigs of RAM, but there is a 128 gig version. You pay a little bit more money. Also, you have some really nice sounding stereo speakers, which is something that I love. Very loud. They have good bass presence as well. They don't distort, so I really like that. And it keeps the headphone jack on here as well with NFC, and you also get an infrared port, so you can use this as a remote controller or something like that, which is something that I really like. The fingerprint scanner is side mounted, and it's on the power button. I think it's one of the best places to put it. It's just really fast getting into this device. So this phone does not really let you down when it comes to camera quality. It's a 64 megapixel standard and a 13 megapixel ultra wide with a 2 megapixel macro and depth sensor. You also have 4K video on the back and then 1080p video on the front, along with a 20 megapixel selfie. As you can see from the shots, for 233 bucks, I was really happy with image quality on here. Color was pretty good on here. You also have pretty good depth of field on here, as well as detail, dynamic range. So I was really happy again with the ultra wide. So at this price point, I think anybody buying this phone will be extremely happy with the cameras. So the real highlight with this phone is the massive battery at 5,160 milliamps. This phone is definitely really hard to kill in a day. You can easily get around 8 hours of screen on time with this guy, and you get very fast charging at 33 watts as well. So this is a definite buy for me. Next is the Samsung Galaxy A32. You can find this for around $244 right now, and this is an awesome device that offers a lot for the price point. So you don't get a flashy design on here. It's just a plastic design. I think it looks pretty clean and pretty elegant looking, so I don't really hate the design. It comes in some really cool colors as well. But the highlight with this phone is the Super AMOLED display, and it's at 90 Hz. So it's a super smooth, beautiful display on here color wise. So you do have 1080p for the resolution, 411 for the PPI, and you do have a water drop notch on here and kind of bigger bezels at the bottom, but overall display quality is not compromised on this phone. It's an excellent looking display. This phone comes with Android 11 out of the box, which is really nice with One UI. You also get the Helio G80 and Mali G52. So this processor, it's strong enough to be able to handle MIUI without really stuttering and lagging all over the place. So that was fine. I don't really consider this to be a gaming phone. Again, you can do casual gaming on this phone just fine. There are better phones on this list for that, but this phone is just sort of okay when it comes to gaming. So you do have micro SD support and 64 gigs of internal storage, along with 4 gigs of RAM on here. You do not have any type of stereo speaker setup, but you do have a 3.5mm jack still on here, along with NFC on board, as well as the fingerprint scanner is in the display, which I always thought was really cool to have. So I do really like that feature. And you also have face unlock if you don't want to use that. But this phone, where it shines is the camera quality. So you have a 64 megapixel standard, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and depth sensor. You also have 1080p video, which it really should be 4K at this point, but you do have 20 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 1080p. Image quality looks excellent on this phone. It's one of the best cameras on this list. You get really good color, good detail, good dynamic range. The macro camera is really good on here, along with the depth sensor to give you some nice blurry shots. Pretty good video on here, so I was really happy with the images on the A32. The selfie camera was pretty good as well. So this phone also has just excellent battery life. So it has a massive 5,000 milliamp battery with kind of slow charging at 15 watts is my only gripe with this phone. But yeah, battery life is excellent on this phone. This is an all-day phone. If you're a light user, a day and a half really. So I really like this option. Alright, so next is the iPhone 8. If you want an iPhone, this one sits at around 200 bucks even, I believe. So this is a pretty good pickup for an older flagship. You still get a lot for the money. So you do get a premium design. It's a glass and metal design. It's actually IP67 dust and water resistant, so you can drop this phone in the water, it can get wet, it won't break immediately. This phone is more on the compact side, so if you do like compact phones, this is definitely the phone to check out because it's got a 4.7-inch Retina IPS display. It gets fairly bright outdoors as well, and it's a 720p plus 326 for the PPI. Again, I had no issues with the display. It's colorful and it was bright. And again, if you like compact phones, you'll be really happy with the size. So this phone actually has iOS 14. I think it has potential to get the next 2 versions of iOS because it just runs blazing fast with that update. All of your widgets, all of that stuff is there with the Apple A11 Bionic chip on here. It is just pretty fast. I never really have hiccups with this phone. Again, this is a phone that can pretty much handle casual gaming fine, Call of Duty, PUBG. So I was really happy with performance on here. There's no micro SD support, but you do have 64 gigs of internal storage and 2 gigs of RAM. But again, it handles multitasking and performance really well. So you do have on here stereo speakers as well, which sound pretty good bass quality. And you also have the Touch ID up front, which is actually pretty convenient for the days we live in, so you don't have to keep pulling your mask down with Face ID. So I really do like Touch ID these days. And also you have NFC with your Apple Pay, and wireless charging is on board as well. So you have a lot of the little bells and whistles that you would get on a flagship, phone. Now the iPhone only has a 12 megapixel lens on here, so I guess it could be a little bit dated in that regard, but it does take really good photos compared to the other phones on this list, so it does not fall short in that area. I still found color to be pretty good, detail to be there as well. Good dynamic range on here. So overall, I was happy with the image quality, but just know you're not getting any depth sensor, macro, or ultra wide or anything like that. So that's the one trade-off here. But you do get excellent video. I always have to point that out. You get really good video with iPhone. So you do have a 7 megapixel selfie that's using 1080p. I found it still great for taking selfies and FaceTime. So you do have on here kind of a small battery, 1821 milliamps, 15 watt fast charging. So you're not going to get excellent battery life with this phone. Usually you probably get around 4 hours of screen on time. Next is the Redmi Note 8 Pro. This is an awesome phone for around $212 right now, and I still really like this phone. Design wise, it still looks really good, especially if you get it in the pearl white color. And it actually has a glass back on it, so it feels super premium as well with a plastic frame. You do have an IPS display on here at 6.5 inches. It's a 1080p, 395 for the PPI. Overall, it's a really nice display. It's fairly bright. You also get good color reproduction. You get the water drop notch, respectable bezel. So I don't have any issues with the phone. I still use it till this day. You do have on here Android 10 with MIUI 12. This will get Android 11. This phone still has a pretty impressive processor with the Helio G90T processor on here, so you can actually play a lot of games on high. Call of Duty, PUBG, even Fortnite I played on here at pretty good settings. So I was really happy with overall performance with this phone. It's very fast, very snappy. So you do have on here micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here as well. So this phone also has a headphone jack, but no stereo speakers, but the single fired speaker is sufficient. It's fine for what it is. You do not have on here NFC, so that's really nice, along with the infrared port too. So this phone has a physical fingerprint scanner on the back, which is very fast, and again, you have face unlock as well. Where this phone shines is in the camera department. So you have a quad camera setup, a 64 megapixel standard, a 8 megapixel ultra wide with a 2 megapixel mac and depth sensor. So you have 4K video with a 20 megapixel selfie at 1080p. So basically, you're still getting very highly detailed shots on this phone, pretty good ultra wide, pretty good color reproduction. So I'm always pretty happy when I'm taking shots with this phone. Good depth sensor. The macro camera is pretty fun to play with as well. So this is definitely a phone to consider. You do have on here a pretty decent battery life with a 4,500 milliamp battery at 18 watts. So you're usually getting around 7 hours of screen on time with this phone, which is definitely a full day's use. All right, last is the Moto G9 Plus. This is a massive phone, the biggest phone on the list. So if you want something that's just really big, as far as screen wise, then this is it. It comes in at $212 right now on Amazon. Again, all links will be down below. Nothing too fancy. It's a plastic design, has a good feel in the hand, has a good weight. Also, I really like the camera module setup, but it's a 6.81 inch IPS display, HDR10, 1080p, 386 for the PPI. So again, the highlight is it's a massive display, gets fairly bright, and you also have pretty good color in it. You also get that punch hole on the left hand side, which I really like. It comes with pretty much a near stock version of Android, which is also another highlight with this phone. So it was really snappy and fast. I really didn't get any type of lag with this phone. So you do have the Snapdragon 730G along with the Adreno 618 GPU. Overall performance was pretty good on this phone. I did not have any problems. Again, casual gaming is really nice on here with such a massive display. You also have a headphone jack. Unfortunately, no stereo speakers on this phone, which suck, but the fingerprint scanner is physical. It's in the power button, which is something that I really liked. And you also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 4 gigs of RAM on this phone. So this phone kind of falls a little bit short in the camera department compared to the rest of these phones. It's got a 64 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro and depth sensor, shoots in 4K with a 16 megapixel selfie. Images are okay if you are in good lighting, but anything other than that, it's just going to kind of take mediocre photos, and color reproduction isn't always that great with this phone. So Motorola hasn't been famous for cameras in their smartphones. So overall, the cameras are just good and good lighting. So you do have on here a 5,000 milliamp battery with 30 watt fast charging. So the battery situation is really good on this phone. It was again one of the phones that I really could not kill in a day. So you can easily squeeze around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time with this phone. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.